Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family-friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says that I know more about history than most people do.
I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Liberty's kids to teach our kids history.
Okay, I actually liked those cartoons. Yeah, they were okay. Before we get into our episode, let's take a minute to talk about something from a past episode. It's important to keep in mind that Shirley doesn't warn me about our topic beforehand.
Yep, it's fun for me to see what he knows right off the top of his head, and that means sometimes we miss things. If you would like to hear a more comprehensive and well-prepared episode on any topic, just let us know. So, honey, what have you learned since last time?
I didn't learn anything. You had some stuff you wanted to share.
That's true. Okay, so
I know all.
Do you?
Have always known
Do you
all.
though?
Anytime that I can't remember something, I'm feigning so that you don't look like such a fool.
Sure. Okay, so last time, well, not last time, but when we talked about Hungary, you said that in one of your video games, Hungary was a useful country because of their aluminum exports.
Yes. I conquer them quite early if I can, because that aluminum is valuable for my war needs.
Yes. So I did look it up, and it looks like Hungary does mine and produce aluminum.
Cool.
It doesn't seem like they're necessarily like the biggest country or even the biggest European country that does that, but they do have aluminum mines or bauxite mines.
Cool.
Okay, so the other thing we got a email from a listener, and so I wanted to read it.
Well, people listen to this?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Isn't it amazing?
Cool.
It's really great. We were so excited to get this listener email. It is someone that we know in real life, so maybe he's just humoring us in his support, but...
Oh, him.
Yeah. So thank you, Andy, for sending this in.
Oh, we're going to name him? Okay, I was going to make some bit about, what's his name? Randy, Spandy, Candy?
Sure. All right,
Sandy.
so he sent this in after listening to episode 14. At the beginning of episode 14, we had talked about how would you pronounce the name Scipio?
Okay.
There was a little bit of debate.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so this is his 2 cents. I had 3 years of Latin in high school, so take this for what it's worth, but classical Latin would have been what Scipio Africanus spoke in the 200s BC. In classical Latin, the C would have been a hard K. So yep, Caesar would have been pronounced Kaiser. But note that the R would not be an English R, but the R you'd hear in Spanish. Not rolled, but a tap on your hard palate similar to an English D. I should mention I also took a lot of linguistics in college and have a minor in Spanish. So I'm not going to try and pronounce it correctly. I have a couple things from YouTube where I found maybe these will explain what Andy was getting to.
I'm having flashbacks of my students trying to teach me how to speak Spanish.
Right. Okay, so this is from YouTube, a page called Pronounce Names, and this is supposedly the Greek way of saying Kaiser.
Caesar.
Sounded like Kesar.
Caesar.
Yeah. Okay, so he's saying they would have more like a Spanish R at the end. So this is what Pronounce Names says that Spanish or an Argentinian person would say.
Kaisera?
Yeah, that ending R is kind of hard to explain.
So Scipio would have been what?
Okay, so Andy says Scipio would have been Skeepeo. So I would
Scipio?
I would read that as Scipio. He says don't elongate the E though, but without writing in IPA format, I can't easily convey the E sound another way. So this is a hard conversation to have without like having an expert here in person to read all this, but I think it's interesting and I love it when people share their knowledge with us.
It is.
All right, so lastly he says, Shirley, how do we know how classical Latin was pronounced when there have been no living speakers in a couple of thousand years? My point exactly. He says, we have analyzed the Romance languages and applied known rules of linguistic changes over time, and with so many modern examples to trace back, we can be pretty darned certain we have the pronunciation right. We'll never truly know without a time machine or a resurrected Roman, but we're as certain as we can be. So I guess I just have to be content with that.
It's another reason for why it's important to write stuff down. Maybe we can't pronounce the words correctly, but at least we can read them.
Right, but it sounds like we should be writing everything down in IPA format. That's where like it includes the pronunciation marks and stuff.
Yeah, see, I look at those things and it's like looking at music.
I was gonna say hieroglyphics, but
okay, sure, yeah, hieroglyphics. I still can't for the life of me remember. Okay, what does it mean if the letter's upside down?
Yeah, I have to look it up.
What does it mean if the letter's backwards and has an umlaut and a line over it or something like that?
It's very useful if you figure out how to read it.
And I'm sure it is, and like many other fields with which I do not specialize, I commend everybody who can do it.
Yes.
So I was talking how this was reminding me about working with my Spanish students. I think we probably talked about this. Did I tell you about them trying to teach me how to say money? Or how to say dollars?
No, not specifically.
All right, so I'm probably going to embarrass myself again.
I wonder
if they're going to be listening to me or not. All right, so if I'm remembering correctly, I make a common American mispronunciation where when I was trying to say dollars in Spanish, I was saying Dolores. Sounds like the name Dolores.
Oh, yeah.
All right, but my clerk started this, and then my students, they would always watch me and they would laugh if I did it right, or I'd get a claps if I got it right. So I miss those guys so much.
So these are people who have Spanish as their first language. They're learning English, and you're trying to teach them things.
Correct. Yeah.
In English.
Yeah. This class of guys. These guys were from Guatemala. They were from Honduras, Colombia. These guys were guys that Spanish was their first language, the only language they ever spoke, and most of them never even got into the third grade of what their the countries that they were born into. So yeah. And I'm trying to teach them English so that they can get their GEDs. So yes, it seemed to me the most appropriate way to do that is, all right, well, I need to learn some more Spanish so that I can better communicate with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was always saying Dolores, and they always laughed. And it sounds like a woman's name or something. Anyway, if I've learned my lesson correctly, the correct pronunciation is Dólares. Dólares.
I don't think that's perfect, but it sounds more similar to what I'm aware of.
Instead of Dolores. Dólares.
So the accent is on a different section.
So they never wrote it out for me with all those hieroglyphics as you put them to help me figure it out. Anyway, all right. So on to better subjects.
That was a fun class.
Or well, not better subjects, newer subjects.
Yes. So
technically, not even newer subjects. I mean, they're literally all old subjects.
Yes, and now you're waxing poetic. All right, well, I don't have a question so much today as I just want to use this platform we have to declare that I am anti-suffrage. I don't think people should suffer in the world.
Oh, my goodness. Give me strength.
Do you disagree with me? I mean, like, women fought for, what was that, the 20s? I don't even know. Like, we fought to end women's suffering, and I am so proud of those women.
Women fought for suffrage.
That makes no sense.
It does if you know what suffrage means. So I ask for strength because I dare say this is one of the most common problems that I've encountered, and I know I have belittled you in the past because of the same thing.
I've never made this exact mistake. Like, I know what suffrage means, but it's so funny.
So you are confusing the two words suffering and suffrage. Suffering is, yes, when you are being tortured, you are in pain, you are in grief, you are miserable, you are not happy.
Okay.
Suffrage is a very long, outdated term for voting rights.
We just
Women
talked about voting.
fought for suffrage because they wanted the vote. They did not fight for suffering because they wanted men to continue to abuse them and belittle them and treat them as a lower class in society, or a lower caste, if you will, in society.
I suppose that makes sense.
You suppose it makes sense?
Why did they pick...
I get that it doesn't make sense to everybody, but it's correct.
Okay, so I'm going to have to look up the etymology of the word because it makes no sense that suffrage and suffering sound so similar. It seems like they should have the same root, but they're like opposites.
Suffer the little children to come unto me is a popular quote in Christianity.
Oh, allow. So what does suffering have to do with that?
It's the word.
But why?
You are assuming that the different parts of the word, because of the meanings that you are familiar with, you're assuming that those parts of the word don't change or can't possibly have any other meaning.
Okay.
The words sometimes do this, where they'll have the same parts, but they'll mean different things.
Got it.
Now, I'll be honest, as we've clearly demonstrated, I am not a linguist, so I am not familiar with all the rules. I'm still one of those people that I wish I could have memorized that paragraph that I know I read once upon a time, where somebody says the rule I before E except after C, and then there's this paragraph
Of
which
all
is
the
filled
exceptions.
with grammatically correct of
Yeah.
all these words that break that rule.
Yeah.
So I do not remember all the rules and whatnot of that. But yes, so I do not know the etymology of the word either, but often enough I think to myself, okay, this is another example of how words change. And obviously we don't use that word we don't use suffrage anymore.
I've only heard it for
we
voting.
use suffering from time to time, but outside of talking about suffering, I'm hard pressed to think of any word, at least in the English language, that comes close to suffrage, and we haven't used that for, I dare say, not since the establishment of the 19th Amendment. I don't recall reading anything and featuring the word suffrage past that point in history.
Right. Suffrage is, we only use that word in talking about voting rights, and like suffer the little children, we only use it in a biblical context. Okay, so to be 100% clear, suffrage is a good thing.
Suffrage is a good thing.
So specifically women's suffrage, that's when women were able to get the right to vote.
So
and
I
that's
want
a good
to be
thing.
clear, suffrage all across the board is a good thing. Okay. Sorry, it's something about the way you say it made it sound like, oh, women having it is good. I am not an advocate for give it to women and take it away from men.
No, I was giving an example.
Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of men that I don't think should vote because they're idiots. There are also plenty of women who I don't think should vote for idiots. But
you are anti-idiot voting rights.
I am anti-idiot voting rights, yes. But then how do we quantify what an idiot is? We're probably never going to agree on that, so I accept that.
Citizenship tests for voting.
So I accept that the voting rights the way they are is that everybody, even idiots, get to vote.
Yes. All right, so I do want to talk about women's suffrage because my favorite song from Mary Poppins is the Sister Suffragette song.
You like to sing that song all the time.
And which part of it do I blast louder than anything else?
Womankind arise?
No.
Sister Suffragettes?
Though we adore men individually, we agree that as a group they're rather stupid.
It's fair.
Okay, so tell me about women's suffrage.
Women wanted the right to vote and they got it.
What year was this?
It was 1919, I want to say. Maybe
I was right.
1918?
I guessed the 20s. I was right.
You were a little bit late.
Ish.
I do not remember. You might actually be right. I do not remember the exact year. It was sometime between 1918 and 1920. I get confused. I want to say it was 1919, but I always get confused because but am I thinking of that just because it was the 19th Amendment?
But okay, did women have the right to vote in England before they did in America?
I do not know. I do not know.
Because I know that they were having their own fight.
I am not familiar with the voting right laws for England. So I want to be clear. So the 19th Amendment establishes that women get to vote federally. Several states before the passage of the 19th Amendment were already allowing women to vote because, again, states have the right to determine who is eligible to vote in their states so long as they're not violating federal law. And there was no federal law at the time that said that you can't or can allow women to vote.
So like Utah, for example, I know women were voting in Utah long before the 19th Amendment. So would they wouldn't have been allowed to vote for president, though, because that's a federal issue?
I believe in Utah they still would have been able to vote for president. Their ballots would have been counted in Utah as Utah voters. I could be wrong about that, but I don't know.
Electoral.
I want to say I forget her name, and I might be wrong on this. I want to say one of the better examples of this, or the comical, if you will, example of this I want to say it was either Wyoming or Montana. One of the two of them, before women had the right to vote, elected a woman to Congress.
What?
I believe she got a seat in the House of Representatives. I don't remember her name, though, and I might even be getting the timing of that wrong, but I'm pretty sure, there was a woman who was elected to a seat in Congress even before the 19th Amendment was passed.
Oh my gosh.
Because of the laws of her state.
You are right.
Did you look her up?
Yes.
Okay, what was her name? Where was she from? When did this happen?
First of all, the 19th Amendment was passed in August 1920. I was right.
1920. All right.
I was right.
Well done.
Okay, so In 1917...
This is like your birthday. I can't remember. Oh, crud. Was it this day or was it the next day? It was one of those 2 days. Sorry. Okay, continue.
Okay, so in 1917... So it was Montana.
Okay.
Jeanette Rankin.
Okay.
She became the first woman elected to Congress in Montana.
So about, man, it says like 2-3 years before women were allowed to vote. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's really cool.
I agree. History is cool.
History is cool, and sometimes it's horrible.
I'm sorry, did you say something? I wasn't listening.
No, I didn't say anything. There's nothing horrible about women's suffrage. So what else do you know?
All right. So, well, okay. Women's suffrage is a long story, at least in the U.S. It goes back. A point that historians usually talk about is the Seneca Falls Convention. Mm-hmm. And I got to be honest, I'm failing to remember what the year on that was. I want to say 1851, but I have no idea if I'm correct on that or not. But that's where a bunch of women, including some of the more famous names, got together to decide, or to talk about, hey, we want this thing, we want to be able to vote. Let's do this.
1848.
1848, okay. I wonder what happened in 1851 that I'm thinking of, and I'm getting confused with it then. All right. So, and there again, I don't even remember if I know all the names who were there. Like, I know Elizabeth,
Stanton.
Yeah, Stanton.
Susan
Are there
B.
other
Anthony.
names I should? Okay, yeah. Go ahead and give me the list of names because I'm failing on.
Oh, I don't know. Those are the ones off the top of my head.
So,
there was a women's rights convention in 1851.
Okay,
it was Ohio Women's Convention at Akron.
That does not sound familiar, but okay.
Well, Sojourner Truth was there, so it was a big deal.
Oh, yes, she was a very good advocate for that. And Sojourner Truth was one of the women who... Okay, so Sojourner Truth is a good example of the next thing I was going to say.
Okay.
In the beginnings of it, women weren't quite alone. Women had an ally in the fight for suffrage. Mm-hmm. The black community. Okay. Black men and women weren't allowed to vote either. They wanted civil rights. They wanted to be able to vote, and so the two of them kind of worked together. Women were the big players in the push to end slavery or for abolition in the United States, and yeah, they were kind of like these. I guess they ultimately proved to be fair weather friends because after the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, and black men get the right to vote, then there's kind of a huge divide between. Or not a huge divide between them, but the black men having got the vote kind of just abandoned the women's movement, and that's why women very angry about and the women's who were campaigning for suffrage and abolition are kind of angry about this. That wait a second, we were working together on this thing, and now you got to vote before us. That ain't right.
Well, and you abandoned us. Dang.
So, women's suffrage campaigns have gone alongside of many other campaigns in America's history, and those other campaigns have eventually gotten their successes, but women's voting was still left behind. So one example is abolition. Slavery's ended, but women still don't get the right to vote. Black men get the right to vote. Women still don't get the right to vote.
Yeah.
The women were big in the progressive era. Things like union rights and whatnot get passed. Women still don't get the right to vote. Prohibition gets passed in the 1920s.
And that was pushed a lot by women. So that's one where, okay, finally both of them coincide with each other. Women get the right to vote at the same time that prohibition begins in the United States. Okay. So it was like then kind of proof that women were getting political power in the country.
They had influence. Again, without having the time machine, I don't know if I'm the typical male that lived back in that time, but like for me, it's like,
you mean
okay,
a pig?
Sure, a pig. For me, unless I like adamantly disagree with you on something, if you tell me to do something, I'm gonna do it. You tell me to vote a certain way, I'm gonna say, okay, fine.
I don't bully you into voting for people that
I know we don't do that. We usually talk about it and we find that we agree on almost everything.
And if we do disagree, then we vote separately and cancel each other's votes out. It happens.
So I'm not overly familiar with, I think, more than I can tell you about. So, okay, so we mentioned Sojourner Truth, and I like to talk about her because she was one of the people that advocated for the ending of slavery. She did an awful lot of work to help black families secure land and secure their rights after the end of the Civil War. And she was also famous in her campaign for women's rights also.
Right.
She is the author of, I doubt most people would remember ever reading this, but if I said the title, you'd probably recognize it, Ain't I a Woman?
I don't recognize it from the title alone, but it's probably one of those things that's been quoted, and I don't know where it's from.
So yeah, it's a poem that she writes. I think it classifies as a poem. Now that I say that, it's been a long time. I don't remember specifically what it says.
So in my search for 1851, she gave it as part of her speech at the 1851.
Okay, there we go. So
conference.
maybe it wasn't a poem. Maybe it was a speech then. Okay.
I don't know. It could have been written poetically. We'll look it up.
All right. Oh, and so then my other thing, and this is one of the reasons why I say give me strength when you first brought this up, is this is one of my favorite things. So I think all of us have seen on YouTube or otherwise videos of people going around with petitions for all manner of crazy things. The goal being to prove that, as I believe I mentioned earlier, that many voters are idiots. So some of my favorite petitions that you see go around, one is the petition to end dihydrous monoxide in use in water bottles.
It's dangerous. It should be banned.
And when you say it like that dihydrous monoxide, it sounds like a dangerous chemical. And yeah, people are signing petitions to get rid of that dangerous dihydrous monoxide.
With a 100% death rate. 100% of people who ingest it will die.
Yes, and it's in all the water bottles. People are drinking it all the time. They use it in the water you use to clean your clothes, clean your laundry. It's
in baby formula.
Now, just in case anybody out there is not up to date on their chemistry, dihydrous monoxide is water. 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen atom may come together to make H2O. Dihydrous monoxide, water. It is necessary for life. When you drink it, it will not kill you, but you can drink it all your life, and eventually you will die. Not from it, unless of course you drowned or you drank too much of it.
Well, yeah.
There was that lady that died at a Nintendo contest or something. Hold your Wii for a Wii. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. It was a radio contest.
Anyway, okay, so we're drifting away from that.
Yeah.
But anyway, among those ridiculous petitions there's almost always one out there for, hey, will you sign this petition to end women's suffrage?
Yeah.
And everybody who signs it thinks that they are signing to end women's suffering.
Yeah, it's scary how many people they can get on video signing that. But see, this is why I just don't sign petitions. I don't want to be tricked like that.
You don't have to be tricked if you read up and you study the matter. Like if the person asking you to sign the petition, talk to them, ask them questions. Yeah. Their questions will give you will hopefully give you a couple of different ideas. Either one that, okay, this is something legitimate that I do want to support, or you're even dumber about this thing than I am. You don't know what you're doing either.
Yeah. Yeah, I just...
That's another thing that I like about some of these petitions, when some people are asked, what is this about? What are you doing? What is this going to happen or whatnot? And yeah, they don't have the answers. They were just hoping that, but I thought, but just by my, calling this, it's a good thing at the title, you were going to sign it blindly.
Yeah.
I remember... I remember one got passed around at college one time that somehow worked. It didn't get into the classroom that I was in, but it walked by, and several of the students and one of the professors even started talking about it, and it was really amusing to me because the professor just touted it out there and y'all need to sign it, and almost immediately one of the other students in the classroom said, but wait, well, what about this? I mean, where does the money for this come from?
Yeah.
How is this going to be administered? And the professor quickly got very angsty with her. It's why are you even asking those questions? Just sign the thing.
Wait, this was in a class?
Yeah.
That professor was absolutely misusing their authority.
It happens.
They can't force their students to sign something and then get mad when they're trying to understand
to be clear,
what they're signing.
He was not forcing any of the students to sign it. He was encouraging them all to sign it. But it's an
imbalance of power there. There's definitely people in that class who are going to think, I have to.
Well, here it may come to a disagreement between you and I. So I get what you're saying, and yes, there are plenty of idiots out there who are going to do as they're told. But at the same time, this was a college campus. I think it is, while I know it is not 100% true, I think it is fair to assume that you must allow college students to exercise their free choice, exercise their free will.
Yes.
So this professor, he was not making anybody. He made his plea, if you will, as soft, as weak, or maybe even as good as it was. And it's up to all the people in the classroom individually to make up their minds as to whether or not they're going to go on that.
No, I get it, and they're adults.
I don't think you can fault the professor for the people in his classroom just blindly going off with what he tells tells them. So there would be a difference in based on what he was teaching. This was a choir classroom.
Okay.
So if the professor is talking something about music, well, and he's wrong, then yes, I would say, okay, he bears a responsibility for whatever poor choices or actions musically based then his students are going to make. But if it was something about funding for some program, I don't even remember what it was, then no, that's on the students to, having heard an argument, to either just decide, oh, that one argument is enough for me and go off and sign that thing, or, hey, I'm going to do some more investigation or whatever the case might be.
Sure. But he absolutely crossed the line when he got mad at that student for asking questions.
Yes,
because as a professor, his job is to teach and have have students, encourage students to ask questions, because asking questions is where learning happens. And for him to say, no, I'm not going to teach you, don't ask questions, that's so wrong.
Well, again, to be fair, this was a political matter and he was a music teacher.
But it shows his character.
True that.
And that's super messed up.
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of that going on at college campuses, and probably even at the lower grades too. I know it's happening at the lower grades.
It just happens in
the
world.
But we're not going to talk about that anymore, because that gets us into more danger and very, very off-topic territory.
Very off-topic. That is the theme of every episode, is very off-topic.
Not every topic we talk about is off-topic or dangerous. Is it? I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Just delete this whole thing. I don't know. Delete up to whatever the last thing I said about anything coherent was.
I will.
What are we talking about again?
We're talking about suffering.
I am suffering right now.
Sorry. Are you?
No. Was there anything else that you wanted me to say?
No, I have no other questions. You're not... This is one of those areas where it is before the 1950s, so you should know about this. Because you say that you know history before the 1950s.
I know about it. I had the general idea of the dates. I had the general idea of the people. I knew the story. I knew some of the campaigns that went along with it.
Are there any other details that you have?
For women's suffrage, I don't have this detail in particular, because if I remember correctly, you were the one that told me about this. Did you want to share the red rose?
Oh, I had forgotten about that. I'll get it all wrong. What did I tell you?
So if I remember correctly, I never looked this up to see if you were right, but if I remember correctly, you were the one that told me that fellow suffragettes would have their husbands wear kind of a red, they would pin like a red rose or a lapel to their suit coats.
Was it a rose or a poppy?
A red flower of some kind.
Yellow rose.
Oh, yellow okay.
Rose.
To signify that, oh, hey, that I'm a sister suffragette, or even to signify that, though, if I remember correctly, one of the details, though, was the husbands didn't realize that this is what was going on under their nose.
That's right.
So you wouldn't be able to get away with the claim that, oh, and my husband's going to vote for this also.
Yeah, I think it was from a movie. It was called Iron Jawed Angels. It starred the girl from the Karate Kid movie, the third one. What is her name? Also that boxing movie. What is her name? Swank.
Oh, you're thinking of the fourth one.
Oh, I don't...
Okay, so
how many Karate Kid
Daniel
movies
LaRusso had a different girl in all three of the first films.
There were three of them?
And then Hilary Swank starred in the fourth movie.
Okay. Hilary Swank.
Okay.
She was in a
movie. I knew you were talking about Hilary Swank, but since you said third one, I thought, oh, there's a redhead actress. I know I saw her do other stuff, but I don't remember her name.
No, Hilary Swank. She was in a movie about the suffrage movement. And yeah, they were... And again, this was from the movie. I don't remember now how accurate this was to real life. But yeah, the suffrage, pro-suffrage women would like pin a yellow rose on their husband's lapel, like when he went to work or to the, was it in the U.S. or Europe? Or England? I don't remember
this
now.
Was your thing. Like I said, I never looked it up.
So their husbands didn't know that they were going out into the world supporting suffrage because they're like, oh, wife's just pinning a rose on me. How cute. I thought that was a fun detail. All right, I think we're done. Unless you have anything else you wanted to say.
No, I'm good.
All right.
I apologize that this wasn't as detailed or as interesting of an episode as you wanted.
No, it's always a crapshoot. Like, I come up with a random topic and we'll see what you know. And I think kind of the point of this, which we could emphasize again, is like, we are pro-learning. We're pro gaining more information and growing. And so if you have information you can share with me, that's awesome. And if other people have information they can share with us or you, that's awesome too.
Not that I'm thinking about it, like a couple of things that are coming to my mind aren't the story of women's liberty or anything to that nature, but like I am remembering some of the more deplorable stories about some of the suffering that women were doing, some of the indecencies that they had to endure because they didn't have rights, or they didn't have the right to vote, or because they were subjects to their husbands. But
do you have an anecdote you'd like to share?
An anecdote? No, because amongst other things, you said you wanted to keep the show family friendly, and the most egregious one that I'm recalling is what happened to women that got jobs in the mines.
Oh.
So yeah, probably shouldn't talk about that.
Yeah, that could be bad.
Oh, and there's the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire.
That's a big deal. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I can. Did you want to save that for another time or topic or whatnot?
Could you spend half an hour talking about it? And the
half an
ramifications
hour talking
of
about it? It's possible.
Okay, well maybe
We'll save it for another time.
Yeah, we'll save that because that is a important story that I remember learning in my women's history class.
So yeah, I don't remember their names, but I know that when I teach the subject to my students, I've got several slides that show women in prison because they were locked up for protesting because they didn't have the right to vote.
And they would force
if I remember
them.
correctly, the Shirtwaist Fire is an incident that women's rights advocates did campaign on for a time afterwards to people say, hey, we stand with our sisters and we need to be able to vote. And I remember some of the anti-women's campaigns that went on around about the time of the 19th Amendment. There was one poster that I showed my students where, if I remember correctly, it's two pictures of no, it's just the one picture of a man coming home. This is what a suffragettes house looked like. The house is a mess. Just a mess because the woman wasn't there cleaning up.
She's not doing her job.
She was out causing trouble, rabble-rousing and whatnot.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, also, the 1920 election, I believe, is the election where, at least to my memory, for the first time, the major candidates run on a Friends of Women, support women, women's rights advocates
it became a
campaign in their bid for the presidency.
Oh.
So I don't remember. I know I've got scans of the poster, or at least of some of the posters that they used. But if I remember correctly, one of the two parties, I don't remember if it was the Democrats or the Republicans, the particular poster that I had showed that, they were running or at least this particular poster was demonstrated that they were running on a pro-women ticket.
That's really cool.
Pro-women stage, campaign promise.
Yeah, that's really cool at that point that would be a help to their campaign.
Because that's a major change. So the 1920s, we're getting slightly off topic, or pretty largely off topic again, but I think there's some more. So the 1920s is a very, very big, important movement for lots and lots of reasons, but among the really cool things that happened in the 1920s is women are the ones buying things, so advertisers, magazines and whatnot are catering to what women want. What's going to get a woman to come into our store? I kid you not, there are car advertisements in women's magazines.
That's cool.
We don't think about, or at least to the best of my knowledge, I don't think about that today. I don't know what constitutes a women's magazine today, but if I'm going to guess Vogue is still a woman's magazine, and I'm going to guess there's not that many car advertisements in Vogue, at least not muscle car advertisements.
No, it's all perfume and makeup and clothes.
So in consumerism, women suddenly have a much bigger field. And then, and voting is the big thing, because all of a sudden the voting population has practically doubled, if not more so. So, the major parties or anybody that wants to compete in the political theater has to realize that, okay, now I need to secure twice the amount of votes that I've needed to secure in the past.
So you have to appeal to that new voting base.
One of the reasons why there's often campaigns not to allow more people to vote. I should rephrase. Sometimes there are campaigns to not add people to the vote, like to change the rules that would allow more voters, because that means we're going to have to compete more. But that also means you're going to have more competition. So for one example, I believe that there's at least talk of an effort to drop the voting age down to 16.
I don't think it'll ever happen.
I don't think it'll happen either. I hope it doesn't happen. I'm actually in favor of raising the voting age. But if it were dropped down to 16, then the particular part, unless I'm mistaken, the Democrats are the big ones behind this, because they are convinced, and I think probably accurately, that the majority of those 16 to 18-year-olds are going to vote their way. But with a whole new voting block like that, it does open the possibility that, but what if these 16 to 18-year-olds actually don't go along with the Democrats or the Republicans? What if they are interested in some other parties, or at least by a large enough in population they are interested in other parties? Then you risk losing some of the power that you've had. We've talked about the Mexican War before, and how at the end, I don't know if we mentioned this particular detail, but at the end of the Mexican War, one of the big reasons why the United States decides not to take the whole of the country is because that means that a third of voters in the United States would all of a sudden be of Mexican descent. And they didn't want that. This is an unpredictable voting. The U.S. population at the time of the Mexican War is about 15, 17 million. Population of Mexico is about 10 to 13 million or so. So that means that they would, if the whole thing were taken, then that means that a third of the U.S.'s population would be living in the former Mexican territory. That means a third of the votes, third of the seats in Congress. And they didn't want that because we have no idea how these people are going to vote.
Yeah, that's an unknown quantity that could work against them.
And among the other things, not only were these people of an undesirable race at the time, but also another big thing is that most of these people are going to be Catholics.
Not that!
Up until JFK, I don't know if you know, up until JFK, no Catholic presidents.
Oh, I knew that. Okay,
because the United States are proud Protestants. Catholics have always been here, but we're proud of our Protestant history in the United States.
We wouldn't have existed if it weren't for the Protestants. We like our
candidates to be Protestants, not Catholic, not as the term used to be, Papists, who might do whatever the Pope tells them to do instead of doing what the American Constitution tells them to do.
Yes, because clearly Kennedy only followed what the Pope said.
Obviously, I mean, everybody turned Catholic during his reign.
Oh, absolutely.
His presidency was very much like the reign of Bloody Mary. He authorized mobs of U.S. citizens to go around killing all the Protestants he found.
That absolutely 100%
And Biden is doing the same ththing.
Oh, is he Catholic? I think I knew that.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, he's Catholic. I've heard many complaints that say that no, he's what
Catholic
in name only. Yeah. He claims to be Catholic, but he doesn't practice.
Well, Kennedy too. He didn't exactly follow all the morals of the Catholic Church.
Obviously, yes. So, and the same thing goes when Mitt Romney was running for presidency. He's a Mormon. You can't have that in the field either. He's gonna have campaigns of people going around trying to install their values.
Yep.
So yes, amusing.
Amusing is the word.
I find it amusing when I find every what's the word I'm looking for? Every
I don't know. I can't read your mind.
There's got to be a word for this, but I'm drawing a blank on it.
You did say you're not a linguist.
Every comically extremist idea, because I threw comical in there, I find hilarious. The idea that if there were ever an LDS president, or even a Muslim president, or what are some other examples?
Flat Earth. That's practically a religion.
Not a religion, though. Okay, so Buddhist president. Oh, no, because Buddhism, no, I don't think that would apply. So, okay, I'm going to stick with Catholics, Latter-day Saints, and Muslims. The idea that, if one of them were president, all of a sudden the nation would go into a period like Bloody Mary's period. That's not going to happen, because the Constitution doesn't allow the president to do that sort of thing.
Right, and we have all those checks and balances for a reason.
Yes, and also conceivably, if such a person were to be elected to be president, it would suggest that we have gotten over some of our stigmas about as a nation, about Catholics or about Mormons or about Muslims. And there are campaigns like this all the time. So we're picking on the religious one here, but like anytime that somebody throws out an absurd one, like if so and so is elected, the rivers are going to turn to blood, the mountains are all going to erupt into volcanoes. Like, really? Okay, I get that you don't like the person. I get that you think that the person's going to be a bad president, but come on, really? I don't think that anything on the scale of Sodom and Gomorrah has happened in recent history, at least that historians would agree with. Okay, yeah, that constitutes something really, really bad happened here.
Yeah.
So we drifted way off topic with that. You might want to just delete all that stuff.
I may do heavy editing this episode.
So we can save all of that stuff that we just talked about for a future discussion.
Yes, we could. All right, thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to hear a future episode with more information about today's topic, contact us on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Just be sure to specify in your message if it's silly or serious, because we don't want to treat a genuine quest for knowledge like a joke.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
life was easier before AOL.
It wasn't easier. It was just different.
Sure it was. I'd pick up a book that was 30 years out of date and do my research.
Yeah, do a report on Germany and
Paper
open
done.
your parents' encyclopedia where it says they're still in 2 pieces.
I wonder what my parents ever did with those encyclopedias.
Are they still on that shelf?
I don't even remember where that shelf is. I have to...
I thought it was under the fish tank in the living... like, where the dining room and living room meet.
Yeah, that's where it was. But I haven't paid enough attention to how their house is laid out anymore. So yeah, I remember where it was once upon a time, but I don't know where it is now.
See, at some point, old books
I'm inclined to say it's underneath where my dad's desk, or if they're still around there, where my dad's desk used to be, is up against the wall in between the hallway and the blue room.
Could be. Yeah.
Probably shouldn't be laying out the details of my parents' house in the outtakes.
Let's give a full blueprint.
Help thieves figure out exactly how to work their way around in there.
Yes,
it's not like we've told them where to find anything more valuable than 30-year, well now 50-year out-of-date encyclopedias.
But see, a book like that, when it's so old, doesn't it move from being obsolete to decorative, vintage, cool? Isn't there a line where it crosses?
I suppose that's certainly possible. So it would be relevant to historiography, which I believe we've talked about before in the study of how we study history. So we could look back and say, this is what we thought we knew about this, that, or the other thing at this time. Or rather, this is what whoever published that particular volume of encyclopedias thought about the world at this particular time.
Yep.